If the achievements of SpaceX's Starship are measured by its test flights OFT-1, OFT-2, OFT-3, Flight 4, Flight 5, Flight 6, and soon Flight 7, then what people talk about regarding Blue Origin's new orbital rocket program, New Glenn, is the years of delays. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and by the end of 2024, it will mark 4 years with the rocket still grounded. However, Jeff Bezos' company refuses to accept this outcome. They remain confident and have boldly declared that New Glenn might still launch in 2024. Blue Origin's payload for New Glenn's first mission, NG-1, is ready for launch this year. Interestingly, SpaceX's Starship Flight 7 is also likely to take place during the remaining weeks of December. This timing seems to reflect a determined effort by Blue Origin to keep pace with SpaceX, setting a firm target for its engineers to match. But will they be able to achieve this goal? As of the third week of December, in stark contrast to the ongoing activities and progress of SpaceX's Starship program at Starbase, Blue Origin's New Glenn remains stationary, with no testing conducted on the two stack stages. To explain this delay, Dave Limp, CEO of Blue Origin, stated that the testing requires FAA approval and they're waiting for those approvals, while we wait for regulatory approvals for hot fire and launch. From my understanding, once Blue Origin secures this permit, they could both conduct the static fire test and proceed directly to launch. If you think about it, this process seems more straightforward compared to SpaceX, which has to apply for permits for each individual Starship launch, right? What do you think about this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. But is Blue Origin overly confident about a launch at the end of 2024, especially considering they previously had to postpone what was supposed to be the first mission for New Glenn and an important launch for NASA? Initially, the plan was to launch NASA's Escapade mission in October, but as the date approached, the space agency blinked and decided to delay the mission to 2025. At that time, Blue Origin stated they supported NASA's decision and announced they'd reschedule the second flight of New Glenn, originally planned for December, to November. However, Blue Origin has yet to launch any New Glenn rocket, let alone a second one. This delay seems to have been anticipated, as during a talk at AGU24, Rob Lillis mentioned that the Escapade mission is now exploring launch opportunities for next year in 2026 for the twin smallsats, which were initially set to launch in October aboard the first New Glenn. These opportunities would align with an arrival at Mars in 2027. Therefore, the launch schedule recently revealed by Blue Origin appears to be unreliable. And on top of that, the progress Blue Origin's made with New Glenn is far from convincing to suggest that they have a fully flight-ready rocket. Even the timeline for conducting a static fire test for the rocket seems unrealistic. For example, SpaceX's Starship demonstrates exceptionally fast turnaround, with the shortest gap between a static fire test and official flight being about 15 days. This allows sufficient time to address and resolve any issues that might arise during the testing phase, ensuring the rocket's ready for a successful launch. Of course, this timeline is even more critical for a brand new rocket like New Glenn. Millions of things can go wrong during a maiden launch, and even a single issue could result in the loss of the vehicle. For a rocket as big and complex as New Glenn that integrates numerous new components and software, there's a high likelihood of encountering latent issues that may only become apparent during the actual flight. Moreover, Blue Origin needs to launch its New Glenn rocket to determine the vehicle's performance margins. Sources indicate that the current version of New Glenn has a payload capacity closer to 25 tons, lower than the advertised 45 tons. This discrepancy is not uncommon for new launch vehicles, and the company will need to use real-world performance data to refine the rocket's hardware and software for future flights. However, such improvements can only be made after launch once the necessary data has been collected and analyzed. Another challenge is Blue Origin's goal of achieving partial reusability with New Glenn. The company plans to attempt recovery of the rocket's first stage during its inaugural flight, a bold move with a substantial risk. Even if successful, New Glenn will still face fierce competition in the highly competitive launch market, particularly from SpaceX. SpaceX has been a pioneer in partial reusability for over a decade, setting a high standard that Blue Origin will need to meet to stay competitive. Is partial reusability too little or too late for Blue Origin and other startup space companies? That question's not easy to answer, as we currently have only two practical examples of successful first-stage rocket reusability: SpaceX and Rocket Lab. While SpaceX focuses on reducing costs for customers, Rocket Lab emphasizes increasing the launch frequency of its Electron rocket through reusability. When executed well, first-stage reusability can reduce the cost of launching satellites into orbit. SpaceX's success has clearly demonstrated this. Additionally, reusability can enhance rocket reliability. NASA, on multiple occasions, has expressed a preference for flight proven boosters over entirely new ones. SpaceX has leveraged this strategy effectively using its Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy rockets across various phases of their life cycle, from the high risk initial flights to stable commercial operators during midlife to maximize benefits. However, SpaceX appears to be looking beyond Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. Company execs, including but not limited to Elon Musk, have repeatedly emphasized that they are preparing to transition from their current rocket lines to focus entirely on Starship. According to SpaceX's vision, Starship is not just the next step, but a vehicle that will enable space transport at low cost with superior reliability. Recently, SpaceX's president, Gwynne Shotwell, shared their goal of launching Starship up to 400 times in the next 4 years, an ambitious number that reflects SpaceX's determination to dominate the space industry. After all, if Starship achieves the success SpaceX envisions, does that mean the industry's goals have been redefined by the pioneering company itself? Worst-case scenario for the industry is that as Starship starts winning contracts, satellite manufacturers may flock to it due to lower costs, even if they don't need the full capacity that Starship offers. This scenario unfortunately presents challenges for competitors like Blue Origin, ULA, and Relativity Space. Many of their rockets, whether still in development or ready for launch, might find themselves at a disadvantage against a fully reusable vehicle like Starship. More critically, many of these companies are directing their efforts towards competing with Falcon 9, a rocket that's proven highly effective but only offers partial reusability in the first stage. The greatest cost associated with operating Falcon 9 for SpaceX comes from the second stage, which cannot currently be reused. In contrast, Starship is designed to fundamentally change the landscape by making both stages fully reusable. This shift could leave competitors struggling to keep up if they don't find innovative solutions. A more viable scenario might be that smaller companies like Blue Origin, Rocket Lab, and Relativity Space will need to carve out niche markets focused on specialized launch contracts. However, even in such a scenario, SpaceX will likely dominate the launch market with the cost advantages of more affordable rockets. This trend is reminiscent of what we saw just a few years ago with the rise of small satellite launch providers. A flurry of new companies emerged, capitalizing on relatively low-cost investment capital, but many dreams of launching CubeSats daily never materialized, and several of these companies had to shut down. The rapidly changing space industry continues to push the boundaries further, but it also raises an important question. Can a new entrant into the commercial launch market with a partial reusability strategy like Blue Origin survive against a giant like SpaceX? Is Blue Origin poised to become the next SpaceX? With its ambitious goals of securing government contracts through Blue Moon Lunar Lander, offering LEO commercial flights with New Shepard, and planning to provide space station services via Orbital Reef, Blue Origin positions itself as a promising alternative for government and commercial partnerships. However, it falls short of being a true rival to SpaceX. Despite its potential, Blue Origin remains the closest contender to SpaceX, though the gap between the two is significant. While there's always room for change, SpaceX's current dominance makes such a shift unlikely in the near future. Similar to how tech companies in the early 2000s tried to emulate Apple's success, SpaceX and Apple share a unique quality. They set the trends. SpaceX isn't focused on competing with the rockets of Blue Origin or others. Its mission transcends rivalry. It's about taking humanity to Mars and revolutionizing a stagnant industry that's been slow to innovate. The process of landing on Mars was always an incredibly complex and challenging technical feat. Methods such as using giant airbags or sky crane systems, though creative, are not yet the optimal solutions for landing humans on the planet's surface. So NASA has developed a groundbreaking landing system for the Red Planet, incorporating and processing data from SpaceX in a completely different approach from what was traditionally expected. Surprisingly, this solution may not be directly related to Starship. However, these studies will provide crucial info about the technical requirements that Starship will need to meet when it finally reaches Mars. Before delving into NASA's newly unveiled method for getting to Mars, it's essential to first grasp the challenges of touching down on this distant planet. Landing on Mars presents a set of challenges that are unlike those faced on Earth or the Moon, primarily due to its thin atmosphere. Mars's atmosphere is denser than the Moon's, but much thinner than Earth's, which creates a Goldilocks problem for landing. The thin atmosphere on Mars is too sparse to support Earth-like landing techniques that rely on atmospheric drag, such as parachutes or aerodynamic braking. The red planet's atmosphere is extremely thin, less than 1% as dense as Earth's. Terminal velocity on Mars reaches an astonishing speed of nearly 1,000 kilometers an hour, 4 times faster than Earth's. This means that atmospheric braking alone is insufficient to slow down a spacecraft. Leading space agencies around the world, including NASA, European Space Agency, and especially Russia, have faced this challenge repeatedly. During their efforts, they experienced multiple failures, even when attempting to land spacecraft on the Martian surface. Just recently have breakthroughs been achieved in addressing these challenges. A key issue that further complicates landing on Mars is the supersonic transition problem. Retropulsion, where engines are fired backward to slow the spacecraft during descent, is a common method for landing on the Moon. However, NASA initially believed that retropulsion could only work effectively at subsonic speeds below the speed of sound. The challenge with Mars is that during descent, the spacecraft is traveling at supersonic speeds when it first enters the atmosphere. NASA was concerned that firing engines at these high speeds could destabilize the spacecraft, as shock fronts would form around the vehicle, potentially causing significant turbulence or overheating. The shock from the engine plume could also damage the spacecraft, making retropulsion seem impractical for Mars landings. Given these challenges, the idea of landing heavy payloads or even humans on Mars seems almost impossible. The combined difficulties of Mars's thin atmosphere and the supersonic transition problem mean the traditional approaches used for Earth and the Moon are simply ineffective, leaving engineers with few viable options. However, recent advancements in propulsion technology, particularly SpaceX's experiments with retropulsion, have begun to challenge these long-standing assumptions, offering new hope for overcoming these obstacles. This breakthrough was recently revealed by Rob Manning, the engineer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Of course, for SpaceX, sharing technical knowledge is something they strongly support. This collaboration led NASA and SpaceX to jointly monitor SpaceX's Falcon 9 experiments through Propulsion Descent Technology Project from 2014 to 2017. To gather critical data, SpaceX's Falcon 9 boosters were outfitted with specialized instruments during re-entry burns. These tools captured key metrics like aerodynamic forces, thermal behavior, and dynamic pressures that closely resembled conditions on Mars. NASA used advanced techniques including aerodynamic modeling, flight reconstructions, and thermal imaging to analyze these burns in detail. By studying the interaction of retropulsion within the atmosphere, the project provided unparalleled insights into supersonic descent dynamics. During its routine re-entry burns in Earth's atmosphere, Falcon 9 provided a unique opportunity to study supersonic retropulsion, a critical technique for future Mars landings. These burns simulated the dynamics of entering Mars's thin atmosphere at high speeds, offering valuable insights without the need for dedicated Mars-specific tests. One of the biggest discoveries was the behavior of shock fronts created by the rocket engine's plume during supersonic re-entry. Contrary to prior assumptions that these shock fronts would destabilize or damage a spacecraft, the data revealed that they form a protective bubble around the vehicle. This bubble reduces turbulence and heat, enabling a safer and more stable descent. The outcomes of this collaboration were transformative. The data collected not only validated the feasibility of supersonic retropulsion, but also offered a clear path for adapting Falcon 9's re-entry techniques to Mars's unique environment. This foundational work has been instrumental in shaping NASA's strategies for developing human landing systems and advancing plans for crewed missions to the Red Planet. However, many unresolved issues remain when it comes to landing a crewed mission on Mars. Manning noted that there are still numerous unknowns, including how a large spacecraft like a Starship would be navigated and flown through Mars's atmosphere. The planet's thin atmosphere, while sufficient to create complications, isn't dense enough to significantly slow down a descending vehicle. Steering Starship through such an environment is complex, as its aerodynamic surfaces, like fins, may be ineffective at hypersonic speeds in Mars's tenuous air. This raises critical questions about how to maintain stability and control during descent. Additionally, the Martian atmosphere frequently hosts dust storms, which can reduce visibility, disrupt navigation, and increase thermal heating during entry. Wind shears, a sudden change in wind speed or direction, could destabilize a large vehicle like Starship, making controlled landings even more precarious. These atmospheric factors amplify the difficulty of landing safely and reliably. Once on the surface, Starship's massive engines pose another issue. During touchdown, the thrust could significantly kick up amounts of debris from the rocky Martian terrain, potentially damaging the engines. This debris could also jeopardize the vehicle's reusability for return missions. Designing effective protection systems for the engines is essential, as is engineering landing legs robust enough to stabilize a spacecraft of Starship size on Mars's uneven and unpredictable surfaces. Beyond the landing itself, infrastructure development on Mars presents logistical hurdles. Establishing durable landing pads to mitigate dust and debris is crucial but requires resources and planning. Similarly, creating systems to refuel starships for return journeys, whether through in-situation resource utilization or pre-supplied materials, is another challenge. The timing of Mars's launch windows further complicates progress. Due to the planet's orbit, mission opportunities arise only every 26 months. This limits the ability to iterate on designs and strategies quickly, meaning any failures could delay advancements by years. Overcoming these constraints requires careful planning, robust technology, and patience to ensure every attempt is as prepared as possible. Now, let's review some of NASA's Mars missions that have achieved significant milestones. From here, we can further reinforce the belief in SpaceX's achievable ambitions soon. The first successful landing on Mars happened in July of 1976 when NASA's Viking 1 lander touched down. The massive 1,270-pound lander dropped down from an orbiting mothership to make a three-point landing using a parachute and rocket engine. Viking 1's 3 biology experiments found no clear evidence of Mars microbes. The lander was powered by a plutonium decay-powered radioisotope thermoelectric generator and went silent in November of 1982, 6 years after completing its initial 90-day mission. Soon after Viking 1's success, NASA landed on Mars again in September of 1976 with Viking 2. In July of 1997, NASA celebrated the United States' Independence Day in its own unique way by landing the first Mars rover, the Mars Pathfinder lander, along with a small rover Sojourner on the Red Planet. Next, the success of the Mars Pathfinder and Sojourner rover led to a bolder and larger landing on Mars in January of 2004 when NASA's golf cart-sized Spirit rover bounced and came to rest inside the Vaskusev crater. NASA's twin rover to Spirit, the Opportunity rover, landed in January of 2004. Although it was expected to last only 90 days on Mars's surface, the rover actually survived for more than 5,100 days. The rover lost contact with NASA after a dust storm on Mars, and the mission was declared over in 2019. Phoenix lander touched down in May of 2008 using some equipment and tools salvaged from the lost Mars Polar Lander mission. NASA's flagship Curiosity rover completed an unprecedented sequence of complex landings in August of 2012, successfully performing a sky crane maneuver and parachute deployment to land on the surface of the Gale crater. NASA's InSight lander landed on Mars on November of 2018, allowing the first spacecraft devoted to probing Mars's interior to begin work. The mission measured numerous Marsquakes and helped gather data to better understand the formation of Mars and other rocky planets. The mission ended in December of 2022. The only failure of that mission was a mole or heat probe that was designed to move under the surface harder than expected. Regolith frustrated more than 2 years of efforts to dig more than a few inches. NASA abandoned the attempt in early 2021. NASA's ambitious Perseverance rover touched down on Mars on February 18, 2021. The car-sized rover is the most advanced robot ever sent to Mars. Perseverance, or Percy as it's commonly referred to, is busy looking for signs of ancient microbial life to advance NASA's quest to explore the past habitability of Mars. Percy didn't travel to Mars alone. It was accompanied by Ingenuity, a Mars helicopter attached to the rover's underside during landing. Ingenuity went on to make an impressive 72 historic flights, becoming the first aircraft to achieve powered, controlled flight on another planet. Its final flight took place on January 18, 2024, when rotor blade damage brought its mission to an end. When a company is considered to be developing, it means the company is progressively advancing in all aspects. This is absolutely true for SpaceX. While hardware refinements for rockets and launch pads are being implemented rapidly, the launch fuel supply support system tank farm is no exception. This area has become quite bustling with upgrade activities preparing for upcoming launches, especially Starship Flight 7. It seems it's been a long time since we last talked about SpaceX's tank farm. If we're not mistaken, the last video of AlphaTech mentioning the tank farm was back in January when the old vertical tanks were getting removed from the area and replaced with massive hot dog-shaped vacuum-jacketed tanks rather than conventional vacuum containers. To be honest, SpaceX's decision to upgrade its tank system up to this point has proven to be absolutely correct. After supporting the fourth, fifth, and sixth Starship launches, the system has continued to perform well. It appears that for those closely following SpaceX, no major issues have arisen with the upgraded tank system. However, as Starship is rapidly advancing, the tank farm needs to become even more robust to keep up. After the removal of all vertical tanks, the ground support system layout now consists of a variety of horizontal tanks of different sizes arranged as follows: 8 LOX heat exchangers, 4 CH4 heat exchangers, 2 large CH4 tanks, 5 small CH4 tanks, 4 LN2 tanks, and 6 LOX tanks. Recently, we've seen images of new horizontal tanks getting transported to the launch site, showcasing the accelerating expansion of SpaceX's infrastructure. Interestingly, it seems SpaceX will not extend the horizontal tanks into the area where the vertical tanks once stood. Instead, the new tanks are being added in the opposite direction. The remaining space from the vertical tanks might be repurposed for other equipment or just left unused for now. Additionally, SpaceX plans to construct a new separation plant on the opposite side of the launch site. This facility will draw in air directly from the atmosphere and separate it into individual components. The plant will focus on producing nitrogen and oxygen, which are essential for SpaceX operations. Oxygen is a key propellant for launching Starship, combining with methane to power the rocket's engines. Nitrogen, on the other hand, is used for cooling systems and fire suppression. By producing these gases on site, SpaceX could reduce both costs and the time required for their supply. For this essential reason, as Starship turns a new page with a larger version featuring extended fuel tanks, ensuring an adequate fuel supply for this new chapter becomes crucial. By the way, don't forget to like and share this video. It's the motivation that helps us work hard to create videos every day. In addition to bringing more horizontal tanks to the launch site, SpaceX is also modifying several areas around the location. Workers operating on a skid steer were seen leveling the ground near the site, likely addressing the uneven drop-off between the highway and the tanker truck parking spots. This work aims to simplify the process for tanker trucks backing into unloading zones, eliminating the difficulty posed by the steep bump. Currently, tanker trucks delivering commodities to the farm face tight maneuvers when filling stations are occupied. This often involves multiple adjustments, reversing, moving forward, and aligning, which can lead to delays on Highway 4 as vehicles try to navigate the constrained space. The ongoing groundwork could reduce these issues, although it's possible this effort's tied to managing recent heavy rainfall. The tank farm's overall appearance has drastically improved over the past year, thanks to updates like removing the outdated vertical tanks. These changes are rapidly converting the site into a fully functional launch facility. Meanwhile, additional work is being carried out underground where vacuum-insulated pipes, a pipe within a pipe system, are being installed. This update corrects a previous misconception about the pipes being uninsulated. These vacuum-insulated pipes are critical for preserving cryogenic materials during transfer. With the continued expansion of the site, including the development of Pad B, the tank farm is transforming into a sophisticated and efficient operation. What began as a rough and experimental setup is now evolving into a modern and polished spaceflight hub, showcasing remarkable progress. Work on Pad B, a critical component of SpaceX's next-gen infrastructure to support advanced versions of Starship, is steadily moving forward. As SpaceX continues its push for rapid development and deployment, significant progress is also being made on Tower 2 at the Sanchez storage lot. This site has become a hub of activity, hosting the assembly and enhancement of essential components, such as the reinforced quick disconnect arm and the new set of chopsticks designed for the tower. The design of Tower 2 introduces several notable upgrades compared to its predecessor. Among the most visible are the shorter and sturdier arms, an adjustment that appears to enhance both durability and functionality. Observers have also noticed several brown patches on the structure, which mark areas where reinforcements have been added. These modifications suggest SpaceX is not only addressing challenges encountered with Tower 1, but also potentially setting a new standard for future tower designs. Currently, however, SpaceX is focusing more on renovation than innovation, much like they did with Tower 1. While renovation may seem less exciting, it's an essential part of fine-tuning these complex systems. The retrofit process is evident in the ongoing work on Tower 2's chopsticks. Workers have been focused on reinforcing specific areas with steel plates. These reinforcements are first primed with a protective coating to prevent rust before receiving the signature black finish that characterizes SpaceX's launch equipment. While this methodical approach is yielding visible progress, the timeline for installing the chopsticks in the QD arm on Tower 2 remains uncertain. For now, the components are being optimized at the Sanchez lot, likely to streamline final assembly once they reach the launch site. Simultaneously, significant strides are being made on the launch mount for Pad B, also at the Sanchez site. The modular design of the mount allows for individual components like the corner module and side module to be assembled and adjusted with precision. Over the past weeks, workers have focused on closing gaps between these modules, a critical step in ensuring the structural integrity of the mount. Recent updates indicate that nearly all gaps in the mount have now been covered, signaling an accelerated push towards completing this key piece of infrastructure. The protective measures, along with the rapid pace of assembly, suggest SpaceX is working to minimize delays and prepare the mount for its eventual rollout to the launch site. However, even with this accelerated pace, the final installation of the launch mount on Pad B is expected to still be months away. While SpaceX is charging ahead with remarkable progress, Tortoise is trying to keep up. The company, Blue Origin, owned by Jeff Bezos. Their New Glenn rocket's been sitting at launch pad LC-36 for quite some time awaiting testing. Despite numerous hints about a comprehensive static fire test, the company has continued to delay, leaving many space enthusiasts disappointed. Despite all this, the company reaffirmed the schedule for the inaugural flight, a mission called NG-1, in a December 9th statement that also disclosed details about the payload for that flight. The rocket will carry Blue Ring Pathfinder, a payload that'll test key technologies for its Blue Ring orbital transfer vehicle. Blue Ring Pathfinder consists of a communications array, power system, and flight computer installed on a secondary payload adapter. Those systems will be tested while remaining attached to the second stage of the rocket during a 6-hour mission. We're excited to demonstrate Blue Ring's advanced in-space operations on New Glenn's inaugural mission, Paul Eberts, Senior Vice President for In-Space Systems at Blue Origin, in a company statement said. Blue Ring plays a critical role in building a road to space, and the mission is an important step for Blue Ring in enabling dynamic and responsive operations that will greatly benefit our nation. Blue Ring, announced by Blue Origin in 2023, is a transfer vehicle for delivering satellites to their desired orbits and hosting payloads that remain attached. The vehicle has 13 ports that can accommodate 3,000 kilos of payload, including a 2,500 kilogram payload on the top deck of the vehicle. Blue Origin said in the statement that the NG-1 mission is ready for launch this year, but did not give a more specific schedule. The company plans to install Blue Ring Pathfinder on the rocket after a static fire test of the vehicle's first stage, which has yet to happen. The company also needs a license from the FAA, which has not been issued as of December 9th. Blue Origin's been performing tanking tests of the vehicle at Cape Canaveral's LC-36, Chief Director Dave Limp said in a December 8th social media post, while we wait for regulatory approvals for hot fire and launch. It's literally on the pad now, waiting for approval. It's waiting for its final regulatory approval to launch, so we're very, very close, Jeff Bezos, founder of Blue Origin, said of New Glenn during a December 4th conversation at the New York Times Deal Book Summit. He also was not more specific about the actual launch date. Blue Ring Pathfinder was not the original payload for the first New Glenn launch. The company's been working with NASA to use that launch for Escapade, a pair of small sats that'll go to Mars to study the interaction of the planet's magnetosphere with solar wind. However, NASA decided in early September to remove the spacecraft from the launch out of concerns that the vehicle would not be ready in time for a launch window in mid-October. NASA is now projecting launching Escapade as soon as spring of 2025 on another New Glenn. SpaceX has set an unprecedented benchmark in space exploration with, get this, over 400 successful Falcon 9 launches and an impressive 380 successful landings. Among these, more than 100 landings on drone ships have been accomplished this year alone, a milestone that no one else comes close to. Yet SpaceX isn't one to rest on its laurels. True to their philosophy of relentless innovation and pursuit of excellence, the company continues to aim for even greater achievements. Recently, SpaceX revealed its latest groundbreaking advancement, an integrated water deluge system on drone ships, specifically designed to enhance the landing process for Falcon 9 boosters. As first-stage landings of the Falcon 9 became routine, the drone ships had to endure relentless workloads, often suffering wear and tear from the rocket's landings. To address this, SpaceX developed and implemented a water deluge system on its drone ships, significantly reducing the factors that impact the durability and lifespan of the vessels. This system was first observed during the Falcon 9 launch on December 5th when the rocket's first stage descended out of the drone. The concept appears similar to the system at Starbase, where the underside of the launch pad features a massive steel plate with thousands of small holes connected to water spray pipes. However, the difference lies in the arrangement. Instead of numerous small holes, the water jets on the drone ship are grouped at strategic locations. A quick glance at SpaceX's video suggests that there are 4 water spray positions, forming a large square that spans a greater distance than the space between opposing landing legs of the Falcon 9. This indicates that when Falcon 9 lands on the drone ship, the rocket will be situated neatly within the square of water created by this system. By implementing such a water deluge system, SpaceX unlocks numerous advantages for the future development of the Falcon rocket series, particularly as drone landings become routine. Moreover, SpaceX may be preparing for future upgrades to the Falcon 9 boosters, potentially involving increased weight or enhanced engine power. These upgrades would generate even greater heat and force during landings, making the additional protection offered by the water deluge system essential for continued success. This strategic move ensures SpaceX is well equipped to meet the demands of its ambitious launch schedule while maintaining its commitment to cost-efficient, reusable technology. The first visible benefit is enhanced thermal management. The thermal stress encountered during Falcon 9's first stage landings is extraordinary. Rocket engines produce temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit during the landing burn. The water deluge system acts as an instant cooling mechanism, using large volumes of sprayed water to quickly reduce surface temperatures. This prevents potential structural damage to the drone ship deck, which is typically made of specialized steel and composite materials designed to withstand harsh marine environments. Additionally, the water deluge system on the drone ship also serves as an effective noise suppression mechanism. Sound waves generated during rocket landings can be incredibly destructive. A rocket landing produces sound pressure levels that reach up to 200 decibels, loud enough to cause physical damage to equipment and structures. The water droplets in the deluge system actually serve a dual purpose here. They not only cool the surface, but help dissipate and absorb acoustic energy. The water droplets break up sound waves, reducing their intensity and preventing potential structural resonance that would compromise the drone ship's integrity. When this system is put in operation, we can also see the level of advancement that SpaceX is achieving, as it represents a highly technical engineering project requiring cutting-edge technology in various aspects. The system may include sophisticated sensors and automated control mechanisms. It's not just about dumping water on a hot surface, it's about precise timing and directing the water flow to maximize cooling and sound suppression. This demonstrates advanced engineering that dynamically responds to the specific characteristics of each landing. This approach reflects SpaceX's broader philosophy of iterative engineering. Each landing and recovery is not just a task, but also a learning opportunity. The deluge system could be the result of careful observation, data collection, and incremental improvements from previous landings. But do you wonder what kind of water SpaceX uses for this spray system? Let us know what your thoughts are in the comments down there below. And please, if you find this video useful, be sure you like and share it, because your support keeps us motivated to keep creating daily content. In reality, we still don't know what type of water SpaceX used during Falcon 9's launch on December 5th or what they plan to use in the future. While drone ships operate in the ocean, using seawater might seem convenient, but it poses challenges due to its corrosive nature. The salt content in seawater can accelerate the degradation of metal surfaces, potentially damaging both the drone ship's deck and the rocket engines over time. To mitigate this, SpaceX may rely on freshwater tanks aboard the drone ships that offer a safer and more sustainable alternative. Freshwater not only prevents corrosion, but also provides additional operational benefits. These tanks can serve as multi-purpose systems, doubling as firefighting reserves in emergencies. By ensuring a steady supply of fresh water, the drone ships gain an extra layer of safety, ready to respond to potential incidents during landings or at sea. With the brilliant engineers at SpaceX, it's certain that fresh water could be the ideal choice for the deluge system on the drone ships. If anyone's concerned about the frequency of Falcon 9 landings requiring SpaceX to transport fresh water out to the middle of the ocean, you truly don't need to worry about that. In addition to the 2 drone ships frequently used by SpaceX, the company also has 2 Falcon booster landing zones. Moreover, SpaceX was recently granted permission to build a new pad at LC-39A. Furthermore, this system could have broader applications in the future across aerospace, marine engineering, and potentially even industrial cooling. The thermal management and sound suppression principles demonstrated here might inspire innovations in other fields. SpaceX continues to make what was once considered impossible, landing, then reusing orbital-class rocket boosters, a routine operation. The deluge system is just another example of how advancements can cut costs in space exploration. For instance, by recovering and refurbishing Falcon 9 boosters, SpaceX avoids the expense of building entirely new rockets for each launch. The refurbishment costs are significantly lower, saving between $4 and $50 million per recovered booster. With over 380 successful recoveries to date, SpaceX estimates it's saved between $15 billion and $199 billion, highlighting the immense financial impact of reusable rocket technology. By reducing launch costs, the company offers more affordable services to clients like NASA, satellite operators, even private enterprises. This affordability attracts an increasing number of customers, further solidifying SpaceX's position as the leader in the launch market. It's also worth noting that a significant portion of Falcon 9's launches for Starlink has greatly contributed to achieving these milestones for the company. In other words, SpaceX needs Starlink to accelerate its rocket launch frequency while ensuring financial stability for the development of its entire rocket program. The US-based SpaceX has surged far ahead of its competitors in space exploration and satellite technology. Since 2019, the company, founded by Elon Musk, has deployed over 6,500 comm satellites into low Earth orbit. Dozens more satellites get added each week. These satellites, orbiting at low altitudes, deliver internet services to areas lacking terrestrial activity. According to the company, the Starlink network serves currently more than 4 million customers across 100 countries. Starlink is connecting more than 4 million people with high-speed internet access across 100-plus countries, territories, and many other markets. Elon still faces little serious competition in this sector. Apart from Starlink, just OneWeb, owned by France's Eutelsat Group, is operational. However, the satellite internet business is evolving quickly. Efforts to establish similar satellite constellations are underway worldwide. If the announcements of various projects hold true, tens of thousands of comm satellites could soon orbit Earth, sparking a new space race. While this competition might appear to be more about economic interests on the surface, it is in reality a lot more. The outcome of this race could significantly reshape the geopolitical landscape. China, in particular, is making a concerted effort to secure a strong position in the space sector. Within the People's Republic, several entities plan to establish 3 independent constellations, each comprising over 10,000 satellites. Initially slow to recognize the strategic value of satellite internet, Beijing is now racing to close the gap with Starlink. China's fledgling satellite providers have already taken their first steps. In August, a Chinese rocket launched 18 sats of the SpaceSail constellation at low Earth orbit, followed by another 18 in October. By 2027, this provider aims to have nearly 1,300 satellites operational with the goal of achieving global coverage. The long-term plan includes expanding the constellation to 14,000 satellites, rivaling SpaceX's Starlink, which is now set to grow to 12,000 satellites. Like the U.S., China is turning to private companies to develop its satellite internet sector. The country's satellite constellations are being established by commercial entities, although these firms maintain close ties to state institutions. The SpaceSail constellation, for instance, is being developed by a company supported by the Shanghai municipal government. State influence is even more apparent in the planned Guowang satellite network, which is managed by the state-owned China Satellite Network Group. The strategic importance of satellite networks has been evident since the war in Ukraine highlighted their military applications. Yet Beijing also sees these networks as tools to bolster its soft power. Since 2015, China has redirected investments into digital infrastructure in developing countries through its Digital Silk Road initiative. In Africa alone, Chinese companies control a significant portion of a terrestrial communications network. A Chinese satellite network would represent a logical extension of this influence. China has been closely watching with skepticism as SpaceX continues to capture market share across Africa. Starlink is now available in 13 African nations. This development has prompted Beijing to quickly accelerate plans to launch a comparable Chinese satellite internet service as quick as possible. The Chinese government believes that the existing ground structure in Africa, built by Chinese companies, could encourage African nations to adopt Chinese satellite internet services. This proposition might be particularly appealing to authoritarian governments, as Chinese providers may be willing to comply with censorship demands than SpaceX. The question remains whether this strategy will be successful. Starlink currently has a 5-year head start, a significant advantage in terms of market penetration and user adoption. Bridging this gap will require substantial effort and investment in China's satellite production capabilities that are rapidly advancing, with Shanghai Satellite Factory now able to make 300 SpaceSail satellites a year. However, this output pales in comparison to SpaceX, which can make up to 1,500 Starlinks over the same time. For China to catch up, it'll need to not just ramp up satellite production, but also build a competitive network infrastructure, invest in aggressive marketing strategies, and secure partnerships with African governments in private sectors. The Chinese service would need to provide comparable or superior performance at a competitive price point to gain traction in a market already getting served by Starlink. Moreover, political and regulatory factors also play a critical role. While some authoritarian regimes may prefer a censored internet option, other nations might prioritize faster deployments, superior service quality, and global interoperability, all areas where Starlink currently excels. China's ambition in the satellite internet space align with its broader goals of expanding influence in Africa through infrastructure investments and digital connectivity. However, overcoming the technological, logistical, and market advantages of SpaceX's Starlink program will be a formidable challenge. If China succeeds, it could reshape the competitive landscape of satellite internet services, especially in regions like Africa, where connectivity is becoming increasingly vital for economic growth and development. NASA is currently facing a period of crisis as the timeline for the Artemis II mission has been delayed once again. Besides, the change in the administrative position marks a significant turning point for the leading U.S. space agency in the coming period. Join us as we delve into the reasons behind the Artemis II mission delays and explore whether the leadership change at NASA could resolve the lingering issues surrounding this lunar mission. Less than a year after announcing significant delays for the next two Artemis lunar missions, NASA officials stated on Thursday that the projected flight dates have been postponed once again. The first crewed flight around the moon is now expected to take place around April 2026, with the first lunar landing slated for mid-2027. NASA admin Bill Nelson explained that the delay is necessary to revise the Orion spacecraft's re-entry trajectory to reduce stress and prevent unexpected damage on the heat shield, as observed during the uncrewed test flight year before last. Additionally, the extended testing of the spacecraft's environmental control and life support systems needs to be completed.
And based on the data, we have decided, NASA unanimously in our decision makers, to move forward with the current Artemis II Orion capsule and heat shield with a modified entry trajectory that you lessen the heat coming back into the Earth's atmosphere. Additionally, we need to complete our updates to the Orion environmental controls and the life support systems that were identified earlier this year.
Future heat shields for the Artemis III moon landing mission and subsequent flights will essentially use the same materials but with modifications to improve their performance during re-entry. In the meantime, Nelson said, "We are planning for Artemis II to launch in April of 2026, and we're going to do all in our power with our commercial partners to launch earlier." Artemis program aims to send astronauts to the moon's south polar region, where ice deposits may allow crews to one day extract oxygen and hydrogen to produce air, water, and rocket propellants that would not have to be carried up at great expense from Earth. Following the launch of Artemis II, Nelson said NASA is going to make any adjustments that are necessary, and we plan to launch Artemis III, the first landing on the moon in over half a century. Assuming the SpaceX lander is ready, we plan to launch Artemis in mid-2027. That will be well ahead of the Chinese government's announced intention of sending taikonauts to the moon in 2030. We need to get the Artemis II test flight right to ensure the success of our return to the moon. NASA launched the Artemis program's first test flight, Artemis I, in 2022, using the agency's SLS to send an unpiloted Lockheed Martin-built Orion capsule on a looping flight around Moon and back. NASA had planned to launch the Artemis II mission at the end of this year to carry a 3-man, 1-woman crew around the moon to thoroughly test the spacecraft's life support, propulsion, and other systems. But after the Artemis I flight, engineers discovered the Orion capsule's 16-foot wide heat shield suffered unexpected damage during its high-speed return from the moon using a technique called skip entry. In a skip entry maneuver, the capsule briefly dips into the Earth's atmosphere to slow down, then rises back out before re-entering for its final descent. This technique is akin to a flat rock skipping across a calm pond and offers advantages such as increasing the range of potential splashdown sites. Orion's heat shield is designed to ablate or burn away during re-entry as the spacecraft plunges into Earth's atmosphere at speeds exceeding 25,000 miles an hour. The charred material is intended to remain intact, forming a protective insulating layer. However, during Artemis I's re-entry, more of this charred material detached from the heat shield than predicted by computer models. Although this unexpected material loss didn't affect the spacecraft, NASA noted that any onboard astronauts would not have noticed. It did raise questions for engineers. To ensure future safety, they aimed to determine the cause and refine computer models to accurately simulate re-entry effects under varying trajectories. After hundreds of tests and exhaustive analysis, NASA has since determined that while the capsule was dipping in and out of the atmosphere as part of that planned skip entry, heat accumulated inside the heat shield's outer layer, said Pam Melroy, a former shuttle commander and now deputy admin of NASA. That heat buildup led to gases forming and getting trapped inside the heat shield, she said. This caused internal pressure to build up and led to cracking and uneven shedding of that outer layer. While the same type of heat shield will be used for the Artemis 2 mission in April 2026, the crew will use a modified re-entry trajectory to reduce the sort of heating that damaged the Artemis 1 heat shield. For future Orion spacecraft, NASA and its prime contractor, Lockheed Martin, will implement changes to address the heat shield seepage issue. However, even with this solution, the space agency must prioritize astronaut safety before sending a crew aboard the Orion spacecraft, representing yet another delay for Artemis's program that's already faced budget overruns and overly ambitious timelines. On the other hand, a significant event that might alter the current trajectory of the lunar mission is the appointment of a new NASA administrator. On December 4th, President-elect Trump announced his selection of Jared Isaacman, a billionaire entrepreneur and space enthusiast who's flown into orbit twice with SpaceX, as the next administrator of NASA. I'm delighted to nominate Jared Isaacman, an accomplished business leader, philanthropist, pilot, and astronaut, as administrator of NASA, Trump posted on his social media platform, Truth Social. Jared will drive NASA's mission of discovery and inspiration, paving the way for groundbreaking achievements in space science, technology, and exploration. In a post on X, Isaacman said he was honored to receive Trump's nomination. Having been fortunate to see our amazing planet from space, I'm passionate about America leading the most incredible adventure in history, Isaacman wrote. On my last mission to space, my crew and I traveled farther from Earth than anyone in over half a century. Can confidently say this second space age has only just begun. Senior officials who previously served at NASA under President Trump and Obama have also endorsed Isaacman as the next administrator of NASA. Jared Isaacman will be an outstanding NASA admin and leader of the NASA family, said Jim Bridenstine, who led NASA's administrator during Trump's first term. Jared's vision for pushing boundaries, paired with his proven track record of success in private industry, positions him as the ideal candidate to lead NASA into a bold new era of exploration. I urge the Senate to swiftly confirm him. Lori Garver, NASA's deputy administrator during the Obama presidency, wrote on X that Isaacman's nomination was terrific news, adding he has the opportunity to build on NASA's amazing accomplishments to pave our way to an even brighter future. Isaacman's tenure at NASA would involve managing an annual budget of nearly $25 billion, much of which is allocated to the agency's Artemis program, aimed at getting American astronauts to the moon by the end of the decade. However, with delays mounting and China targeting a manned lunar landing by 2030, the incoming Trump administration may consider revisiting NASA's Artemis architecture. Isaacman, a vocal advocate for the commercial space industry, has been critical of several Artemis-related decisions. On X, he's questioned NASA's choice to fund 2 backup lunar landers while failing to develop contingency plans for the SLS rocket. The SLS costs over $2 billion to launch, excluding ground infrastructure and Orion spacecraft expenses, and is completely expendable. None of its components can be reused, despite utilizing solid rocket boosters and main engines repurposed from the retired shuttle program. Therefore, one of Isaacman's potential initial moves could involve phasing out the SLS. Canceling SLS would require congressional approval, posing challenges due to the rocket's strong bipartisan support in key states like Alabama, where NASA's SLS program is based. Currently, NASA is preparing the second SLS rocket inside the vehicle assembly building at Kennedy for the Artemis 2 mission, slated to fly 4 astronauts around the far side of the moon in the first deep space crewed mission since 1972. Despite its limitations, the SLS and Orion spacecraft are essential for Artemis 2, scheduled for 2026. Beyond that, alternative architectures may be explored under Isaacman and Trump administration, likely with the input from Elon Musk, viewed as a key advisor. These alternatives might include foregoing the upgraded SLS Block 1B, projected to cost nearly $6 billion according to NASA's Inspector General, or reevaluating the need for the Lunar Gateway Station in orbit around the Moon. Instead, the promising contender SpaceX is designing its Starship rocket to eventually transport people and heavy cargo from Earth to the Moon and Mars. By utilizing reusable boosters and spacecraft to achieve high-speed launches, SpaceX projects that the cost of launching a ton of cargo on Starship will be 100 times cheaper than the company's Falcon 9. This could make the cost of sending a ton of equipment into space on Starship lower than the price of a Tesla Cybertruck and significantly more affordable than launching the same payload on the SLS. If such changes indeed do occur, the new NASA admin would prove to be a visionary leader prioritizing strategic shifts to improve cost efficiency and foster advancements in commercial spaceflight. This approach could fundamentally reshape NASA's lunar exploration strategy. With the support of President Trump, I can promise you this: we'll never again lose our ability to journey to the stars and never settle for second place, Isaac Monroe on X. We'll inspire children, yours and mine, to look up and dream of what's possible. Americans will walk on the moon and Mars, and in doing so, we'll make life better here on Earth. What if there was a massive launcher capable of hurling payloads into space without the need for fuel-thirsty rockets? You could save significant costs on fuel and reduce potential risks. Sounds like sci-fi, but a space technology company, SpinLaunch, has implemented this method. They become a prominent player in the eagerly anticipated space industry and could compete with SpaceX's modern rockets. However, sadly, SpinLaunch's activities seem to be getting quieter by the day, showing signs of stagnation. So what problem are they having? Is SpinLaunch really an effective solution for space? Why SpinLaunch a vehicle that can compete with SpaceX? SpinLaunch made waves in 2018 with its ambitious plans to develop a kinetic launch system at a low-cost, high-speed alternative to traditional rockets. Instead of vertically launching satellites atop a rocket, SpinLaunch proposed spinning payloads to extreme G-forces within a vacuum chamber before hurling them into orbit. The company's made some bold claims about its system. It can send a satellite weighing up to 200 kilos into orbit for just $250,000 and conduct 5 to 10 launches a day. Progress is underway, and SpinLaunch has conducted 10 suborbital tests using a smaller version of its accelerator at Spaceport America in New Mexico, where the company holds a long-term lease. SpinLaunch represents a novel and entirely distinct approach to the launch sector compared to traditional rocket engineering. With a focus on reducing costs and increasing efficiency, it holds significant potential to compete with the goals SpaceX is pursuing in the expanding space economy. However, it seems that the company is still struggling with its finances. After a long period of silence following a $71 million funding round back in 2022, SpinLaunch has recently begun seeking new funding. According to filings with the SEC, the company has closed $11.5 million of a planned $25 million funding round. However, other sources suggest that the startup had discussions with investors 9 months ago aiming to raise $350 million in a round that would value the company at $2 billion. This indicates the company urgently needs funds either to address shortfalls for the SpinLaunch project or for another plan they have not yet disclosed. According to a reliable source, the startup is considering raising such a large amount of money to compete with Starlink. This plan first came to light back in 2021 when SpinLaunch filed with the FCC to operate a constellation of 1,190 satellites to provide global broadband from space. The company, under the subsidiary name SN Space Systems, initially submitted its application to the FCC in November of 2021. A document filed with the agency by former senior management advisor Michelle McClure indicates that the company met with FCC staff back in September to discuss the application, but it remains unclear how close the company is to getting approval. Addressing these issues, SpinLaunch CEO David Wren stated that the figures were highly inaccurate and misleading and expressed satisfaction with their recently closed financing. It's uncertain whether this situation will impact the well-known SpinLaunch program, but these developments may indirectly indicate that the 10-year-old startup is undergoing a period of transition as it aims for commercialization. In October, SpinLaunch appointed 2 new board members, including space executive Domhnall Slattery as chairman. Then in March of this year, the board members appointed Wren, the company's former COO, as CEO, replacing SpinLaunch founder Jonathan Yaney. Furthermore, the company is also facing challenges with the spin technology that underpins its core concept. Before discussing the obstacles, let's take a look at how SpinLaunch works. It operates similarly to using a centrifugal mass accelerator to propel small payloads into space with minimal fuel. This payload is inserted into a dart-shaped projectile that's attached to a long and sturdy carbon fiber tether. This tether, securely fastened and enveloped within a centrifuge, doubles as a vacuum chamber, effectively minimizing internal air friction. At the heart of this ingenious system is an electric motor drive that propels the tethered projectile into a progressively accelerating rotation, reaching speeds nearing an impressive approximate 8,100 kilometers an hour. Upon hitting the desired velocity, the system seamlessly releases the projectile from its tether, directing it with precision into a vertical exit tube reminiscent of a chimney along the chamber's rim. This dynamic release not only breaches a membrane-like vacuum seal, but also imparts the projectile with ample kinetic energy to soar into space, where the payload gracefully separates. SpinLaunch eliminates the need for rocket fuel during launch, addressing one of the significant cost and environmental burdens of traditional space travel. By removing fuel, not only are launch costs reduced, but the environmental impact is minimized too. Additionally, the absence of onboard fuel during the launch phase allows payloads to save their propellant for use after passing through the densest part of the atmosphere, potentially extending their mission capabilities. However, despite its theoretical promise, SpinLaunch faces significant challenges in practical application. A major hurdle lies in scaling up the infrastructure. The current accelerators, including a 33-meter model in New Mexico and a smaller 12-meter prototype in California, are only suitable for suborbital launches. Achieving orbital velocities and altitudes would require a much bigger accelerator, approximately 100 meters in diameter, posing immense engineering and financial challenges. Furthermore, their current achievements fall far short of orbital standards. Since the first launch in 2021 and 9 later tests in 2022, SpinLaunch has only reached an altitude of 10 kilometers and a payload velocity of 1,600 kilometers an hour. These results are far below the orbital requirements of 300 kilometers altitude and a speed of 25,000 kilometers an hour. Significant drag on the payload during ascent highlights the technical challenges SpinLaunch must overcome. On the operational front, the use of kinetic energy poses considerable risks. The extreme forces generated during acceleration and sudden transition from the vacuum inside the accelerator to the external environment can damage payloads. This limitation makes the system more suitable for solid fuel payloads, yet the industry trend leans towards liquid fuel propulsion systems. Plus, ensuring sensitive instruments and components can withstand these forces remains a substantial obstacle. Location selection is another critical issue. While the system's design allows for relatively straightforward scalability, finding suitable construction sites has proven difficult. Initially targeting Hawaii, a strategic location near the equator offering geographic advantages for launches, SpinLaunch faced local opposition due to safety concerns, environmental impacts, and potential risks to Hawaii's reputation as a premier tourist destination. After setbacks in Hawaii, SpinLaunch shifted focus to Alaska, which has fewer population density concerns but lacks the equatorial advantage. However, they faced resistance there too due to limited prospects for job creation and economic benefits. Efforts to establish a facility along the U.S. coastline encountered regulatory and environmental obstacles, while plans for international expansion remain uncertain. Despite these challenges, SpinLaunch continues to push forward with its vision. The potential for cost-effective and environmentally friendly launches is too significant to ignore. Addressing the system's structural, operational, and logistical limitations will be critical for achieving its long-term goals. Are there other drawbacks or risks we haven't considered? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and share this video to motivate us to keep working hard for you every day. Now, the question remains, if SpinLaunch succeeds, could it compete with SpaceX? This poses significant challenges for SpinLaunch. While SpinLaunch is focused on launching payloads to space and building a satellite constellation, SpaceX operates on a much bigger scale. Looking ahead, SpaceX plans to further enhance the capabilities of its Falcon rockets, particularly Falcon 9, by increasing the number of launches and extending the lifespan of its reusable components. Complementing the Falcon system is Dragon, a spacecraft renowned for its reliability. Right now, Dragon's the only U.S. vehicle capable of carrying people to space, further solidifying SpaceX's advantage over the competition. While SpaceX's existing systems already surpass those of its competitors, its future lies in Starship. After the 6th successful Starship flight in mid-November, SpaceX is making progress towards operational readiness. With its massive size, Starship will have the capacity to carry hundreds of tons to orbit, far exceeding the payload capabilities of SpinLaunch and other rockets. The groundbreaking feature of Starship is its full reusability, a significant leap beyond the partial reusability of Falcon rockets. This innovation is expected to drastically reduce costs, potentially lowering launch prices to as little as $2 million a mission. While this figure is higher than SpinLaunch's projected costs, Starship offers unmatched capabilities. Its full reusability will also enable unprecedented launch frequencies, with plans to expand from 4 launches this year to 25 next year, and eventually hundreds of launches annually, even approaching daily operations. Meanwhile, other companies are advancing rapidly. Rocket Lab's expanding its portfolio with the Electron rocket and the upcoming Neutron launch vehicle. ULA's introduced Vulcan Centaur, and Blue Origin is gearing up for the highly anticipated launch of New Glenn. These rapid advancements in the industry are widening the competitive gap for SpinLaunch, making it clear that traditional rockets remain the preferred choice for accessing space. However, it's undeniable that if SpinLaunch achieves successful orbital launches, it'll mark a major breakthrough in the space industry. Often, those who succeed take a path opposite to the majority. And that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.